This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV. It's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Hey, Fidelity. What's it cost to invest with the Fidelity app?
Start with as little as $1 with no account fees or trade commissions on U.S. stocks and ETFs.
That's music to my ears.
I can only talk.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Zero account fees apply to retail brokerage accounts only. Sell order assessment fee not included. A limited number of ETFs are subject to a transaction-based service fee of $100. See full list at fidelity.com/commissions. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
You're listening to the Animation Addicts Podcast with the Rotoscopers. Episode 272, Isle of Dogs. You heard the rumor, right? Welcome to the Animation Addicts Podcast with the Rotoscopers, the #1 place to get your animation fix with animation addicts just like you. Each episode, we dive into the wonderful world of animation featuring Disney, DreamWorks, Pixar, and everything in between. From hilarious discussions and movie reviews to interviews with industry insiders, this show's mission is to brighten your day through our love of animation. So hop on your nerdy couch, grab some snacks, and get ready to hang out with your animation besties because it's time to dive into today's episode.
Hey there, animation addicts. I'm your host, Morgan Stradling.
And I'm Chelsea Robson. Morgan.
Yes?
Do you know how many animal islands there are?
Animal islands. What? And by animal islands, you mean islands that are entirely populated by animals?
Yes.
Not an island named after an animal or something like that.
No. And entirely populated by animals.
No humans.
No humans.
Well, there has to be so many because there's so many little dinky islands that you're like, why doesn't anyone live here even though someone owns it?
True.
Throwing something out there, 340.
Well, maybe there are, but I've only found 8.
I was way off.
I mean, maybe there are, but
Samsonite. Way to make me feel good. Well, there could be.
So we have Pig Island in the Bahamas. Basically, a bunch of pigs were abandoned there, and they have become the owners of this island, basically.
That's not frightening at all.
Right. The pigs descended. Like, they're feral pigs, and they've just gotten really good at swimming out into the ocean and getting, like, garbage off of boats that people drop and stuff. So I've seen looking at pictures, and I will post pictures in the show notes, so you got to go see that. But it's like, it's from Nassau. You take a plane and you got to rent a boat, and then you go about a mile north of this area. And it's a lot to get there, but it is Pig Island. And then we have Cat Island, which is off of Japan, which is, I think, what I was really thinking of when I started thinking about Isle of Dogs, this movie, because I knew that they like banished all their cats or something. And so I wanted to look into on that. And there is an island off the coast of Japan, and it's the cats rule the whole thing. Like, it's crazy. And then there's another one, Rabbit Island off of Japan. And I'm thinking, what is wrong with it? Like, Japan just is like, we're not going to kill them. We're just going to move them. Any of these animals, maybe they just have a lot of like allergies. I don't know. But there's Rabbit Island.
Rabbits. Interesting.
And then there's one off of Maryland that has horses throughout the whole thing. And they're called the Swimming Ponies.
Ooh.
And then there's Seal Island, which is off of South Africa. Monkey Island, which is off of Puerto Rico. There's Snake Island, which I've heard quite a bit about. It's called Ilha de Queimada Grande. So it's like the island of the big burn. So obviously there's some type of like poison going through there, but it's off of the coast of Brazil. And I've heard several people be like, oh my gosh, it's like horrifying. Snake Island. No one goes there. Like, okay, good to know. And then there's Goat Island off of South Carolina, where I guess they decided to leave their goats on this island. They live there most of the year. And then wintertime, they go and they round them up, and then they go and like put them on somebody else's farm so that because it's too cold for them. So these things exist. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8 of them that I got. So
interesting. Well, there we go.
Now we know.
Not 340, but 8 is good. And each one sounds so sad and horrifying at the same time, depending on which one it is.
I know.
So today we are going to be talking about one of these fictional islands where there are just dogs. Isle of Dogs. This is going to be a fun episode, so get ready. Give us a second and we'll hop right into it.
Lowe's knows what makes SpringFest savings even better are member-only doorbuster deals. Right now, rewards members can save $40 on an Allen & Roth Chesler Gold faucet. Was $99, now $59. Plus, save $110 on a Cobalt 40-volt battery trimmer and blower combo kit. Was $279, now $169. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 3/24 while supplies last. Program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, so before we jump into our main discussion, let's set the stage. General information. This was produced by a few studios. The first studio is Studio Babelsberg, Indian Paintbrush, and American Empirical Pictures. There were a few studios that helped with the animation. It was then distributed by Fox Searchlight Pictures. The director, of course, Mr. Wes Anderson. Immediately, within the first frame of this film, and this is very Wes Anderson to me. That's immediately what I thought.
Yeah.
And release date, March 23rd, 2018. Budget, unsure, although I did look to see what the budget was for his previous stop motion animated film, which came out a few years prior, Fantastic Mr. Fox. That was $40 million. So I think roughly that would be the same. We don't really see that these stop motion pictures really skyrocket in cost. But the box office was $64.2 million. So not too bad and pretty fine for a stop motion film. You know, you would have liked to see it do a little better. I remember when this came out, I remember seeing the trailer and being very intrigued by it. But then when push came to shove, didn't end up going to see it.
I did see this movie and I had a really great experience doing this. I went to the press screening and they had a traditional Japanese taiko drumming group there come in and do this performance right before the event started. And it was really awesome. I don't remember, it's been a couple years now, but there was probably at least 10 to 15 of these drummers.
Wow.
I mean, you can see it in the movie. There's a moment where you have all these drummers come in. Basically, taiko drumming, it's like a full body drum line. And so you just see them like doing all of these movements with their arms, and their whole body just gets into every drum beat. And it's really cool. It's almost a dance. So that is what I remember mostly from this experience of being like in the theater. But it was also in like a very artsy theater in Tempe. Yes. It's like right next to ASU. So it's definitely
the Tempe Art Theater is what it's called.
Ah, yes. So it definitely knew its location and its crowd. So it was a fun experience. I enjoyed it.
Nice. That sounds very fun. Yeah. So finally, when I got around to watching this, it pleasantly surprised it was on Disney Plus. So with the great acquisitions that have happened over the years, that's kind of your first place to look. Like, okay, is it on Disney Plus first? Because most likely, right? And since it was distributed by Fox Searchlight, that makes sense. And yeah, when watching this, I'd watched Fantastic Mr. Fox actually a month ago.
Okay.
We were on a cruise and they had a movie station that was playing, honestly, the most random assortment of movies. It's like they put every single movie into a bag and then just pulled one out of the hat. So we had Fantastic Mr. Fox came on one time, and then the Dolly Parton movie 9 to 5.
Nice.
So like this isn't a genre sort of station or, oldies or whatnot, or animation or kids. It was just, this is what we feel like showing today. So yeah, we ended up watching that. So I definitely got reacquainted with Wes Anderson. And this one is very much similar vein. It's his style, his humor, his aesthetic, and it's very good. He's a fantastic director, screenwriter. You know what I love about him is that his movies are funny, but they're not laugh out loud funny. It's more of a like nod your head, like, I get that. Yeah.
Right. It's super
and
quirky.
there's so much detail that you'd have to watch it again to see some of these.
Yeah. There is a video on his IMDb page that gives a quick overview of different elements that he is known for. I'll go ahead and just name them off, what they show. But it's a cool video to go watch because they do show examples of what you were talking about. So there's the novel storytelling. So as though you're reading a novel, so it's a story, somebody narration. And then you always have these overhead shots, like directly on top of something. And then you have the hand-placed objects. So you have somebody putting something down with their hands. So that's all you see. And then you have lots of maps everywhere. They're always showing maps of where things are. And you'll have these different, especially in the live action ones, you'll have very well-dressed, the iconoclasts, as they put it. So it's very costumey, but it's like an iconic look for whatever they are. And you have pastel palettes, often and like very center frame. Once I was told that these are his things, I was like, oh yeah, he does this all the time. And then character tracking shots. So it's like the person stays within the very middle and the camera follows them walking. And then these like whipping shots, like it whips from one place to another. As I was watching it, I was watching for these things, and it's like, yeah, this is everywhere. And the more I watch his work, I understand the quirkiness, and I think because of that, I end up liking it all the more.
Yeah. There's just so many things that we can talk about with this film, but let's first talk about the animation.
Okay.
So I loved the animation, and I really like his stop motion animation. And I guess when we talk about animation, we'll also talk about the art style. But I thought one of the interesting things with animation is when you start working with puppets, and puppets particularly with hair, because the hair or fur has a mind of its own.
Yeah.
You move it, and you can't move every little hair back into place. And so in stop motion, things that have fur or hair, unless it's slicked down, right, it's going to have this movement to it that's just kind of a bit unnatural and odd, because it's just, okay, from frame to frame to frame, the hair is subtly moving because the character has been moved. And I just love it. I felt like that added some ferality to the dogs that were on this island. Just made them look a little bit more mangy and roughed up. And part of the design was they looked like that. They looked like they were struggling and hadn't had a bath in a while. Right. Hadn't been brushed, hadn't been groomed. And I just thought that was one of the things that I loved watching about this film. It just really helped to sell it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked the individual dogs. I like how they gave them all their own just look and feel, and also the Japanese stylings, just how everything has that type of classic Japanese architecture, as well as the moment when they're as the mayor is giving his big speech and you have like the whole huge background behind him, that it's just like, whoa, you're definitely putting off a vibe. But I love how they were able to get all of those feelings in there for each one of the characters. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have these 5 dogs. So to set up, and that's another thing, is from the very beginning, he sets up this fantastic, almost out of this world premise. Where, hey, there was long ago, dogs roam free. Then there was this war with the Kobayashis, and then dogs became tame. And then we find out very quickly that one of the ancestors of the Kobayashi still doesn't like dogs. He's a cat guy. And so because of this disease that's coming, he sends them away and quarantines them to this Isle of Dogs. So that is the premise of the film. And it's kind of preposterous, but it's so fun that you just go with it, because why not?
Yeah. And the writing, as you mentioned before, he throws in these little jokes. The interactions between each one of the characters is just, I like it. I like how he has his group of normal actors that he goes to, and they all just have their same vibe.
Yes.
So I've seen a couple of his live action films, and you'll see these same people. It's like, oh yeah, it's like, it's the Don Bluth crowd, like Don Bluth had his people that he always went back to, and Wes Anderson has his people that he really likes to work with. So you've got Jeff Goldblum in there, Bill Murray, Bob Balaban, Edward Norton, and Bryan Cranston. They're basically the main 5 dogs, but you also have Scarlett Johansson in there every once in a while. And there's one other dog, I think, but I feel like each one of them really played a good part. Like Jeff Goldblum's, like, he always made me laugh because he was like, you heard the rumor, right? And so every rumor, he's the one like letting everybody know that, oh no, I didn't know what rumor. I don't know. Okay. So,
every time. It was great. It was just a joke that just kept happening again and again and again. And maybe if you weren't paying attention, you would have caught it, but you did.
Yeah.
It was just so subtle. It was just every single time. Oh, rumor?
And then they're like, at the very end, they're like, so how do you keep knowing this? I don't know. Like, I like to listen to people, and people like to tell me stuff. So I listen and they tell me.
I love that there's the one dog who really, it's the Oracle pug.
Yes,
but really only because this is the only dog that understands how to watch and understand human TV.
Yeah.
So by that, simply that fact alone, she's able to tell the future.
Yeah, that was
funny. Just like little moments like that just make this super enjoyable and funny.
Yeah. And you had Ed Norton. He kind of is the self-determined leader of the group. And then Chief, who is Bryan Cranston, he's just like, you're not the leader. I did not say that you could be the leader. It's just like how Wes Anderson goes in and creates the dynamic between each one of these animals is really great, because it does humanize them more so than what you would ever think being dogs.
Yeah.
You just get so much out of it. And I'm just a fan.
Okay. I really liked Bryan Cranston as Chief. You know him from Breaking Bad, most notably. But there wasn't a lot of excitement in his voice, but still he was very passionate. Like his conversations, like they felt real. They felt like a real dog. Now, when they were first looking for the dog, like, hey, well, the little pilot's here, and now we need to go find his other dog. Instantly, I thought, well, it's Chief, because look at his eyes.
Oh, really?
I'm like, he has to be, Chief, who somehow forgot, and he's just super dirty. Yeah, that's like one of the first things that came to mind.
Oh, you're a lot smarter than I am.
Well, I mean, there aren't that many dogs that have blue eyes, personally. And I think dogs with blue eyes are really off-putting in a way, because they are so rare that you just don't really expect it. So that's something that stood out to me. Like, I knew that Spots had blue eyes, and they kind of looked the same to me. So I was like, oh, but then I kind of brushed it off. I'm like, well, he would remember. He clearly has this other backstory, so maybe not. And then, turns out he's just dirty. Okay, check, called that. And he's the brother. Oh, okay. Well, didn't know that. And he has this chip on his shoulder, and because he was the runt. Those darn runts.
But did he know that? I don't think he knew that until later on.
No, he didn't.
But
I mean, but that could be like a subconscious trauma that happened to him because he was the runt. He was thrown out, or he didn't, get all the nourishment that he needed and the attention, yada, yada, yada. And so he became a stray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when they first dropped Spots off, oh gosh, that was so sad.
Oh.
And then
it was interesting because they show that Kobayashi is dedicated to the cause by the first dog over will be my family dog or our protector dog, and a lot of times that's not what happens in politics. There's usually rules for thee, but not for me.
Right.
And there's always exceptions or carve outs for the politicians or whatnot. And so I kind of liked that where he's like, no, okay, like I'm really invested and I believe in this. So here's my dog, which isn't just a regular dog. It's our protector bodyguard dog, and so the way that he goes about trying to create this frenzy and, public acceptance of this dog, we see that a lot today. There's just a lot of rhetoric used, a lot of extreme situations to paint the picture.
Yeah.
And, with, the dogs, they have this, and then they're going to have this and they're going to kill us or whatever, jumping through these different hoops.
Like, ooh, that escalated quickly.
Like, okay, yeah, get rid of the dogs, every single one of them.
Uh-huh.
So it's just interesting. I loved the way that this movie showed language, because normally in a film like this, if someone's speaking a different language, you're just going to show the subtitles.
Right.
But there was an artistic choice not to do that. And so we either are left in the dark with what the Japanese characters are saying, unless you speak Japanese. Although there are a few words like doggo or spotso, things like that, which, you could pick up on and get a handle. Or there's different translation mechanisms that are happening through the story. So, for example, in the main town hall, there's a translator, which is like the government approved translation, right? Of what's being said. It's like on a little yellow and black and white board underneath. But then there's also like the news media who's giving their interpretation or their translation of what's being said. And there's other times where just the way, like whenever one of those characters are needing to speak and we need to understand, he just presents it in such a unique way, which I thought really added to the story.
Yeah. Well, I also really liked how as they were doing the translation, they had just the interpreter. So you had Frances McDonald playing the interpreter, and she was just like doing a play-by-play of what was happening. And so I liked how they did that. And even though I am in the dark, and as I do not understand Japanese, I felt more like one of the dogs, because the dogs don't understand what's happening either. And so they're like, did you get that? No? All right, well, let's just keep going. And so you really understand the dilemma between them of like, okay, how do we interact between each other?
Yeah, and it's interesting. The dogs, everyone speaks kind of their native language, although the dogs just happen to speak English, which I'm going to give them a pass for, obviously, because then that'd be incredibly difficult if the dogs, they all spoke Japanese.
Oh.
Well,
right.
So there's that.
So you have the Nutmeg character, who is played by Scarlett Johansson. And she, I think of the dogs, she's one of the most striking and memorable. Even though she's really not in it a lot.
Yeah.
And she doesn't have that much of a thing happening, but I really liked her little gag where she's like, I'm juggling 5 bowling balls on my legs. So you'll just have to yes. Imagine it. And he's like, I can see it. Yes.
Oh, that was great. I love that.
Gags are so great.
Yeah. They go back to it a few times. We never actually see her do the tricks, but we see her doing something.
Right.
And then the visualization of the trick. Yeah. I liked her.
Yeah.
He got the girl in the end.
Yes.
The different rumors that happen on Dog Island, if you will. Rumor about who mated with who.
Right.
And then that ends up not being true. And then there's the rumor about the cannibal dogs, which ends up being partially true. And that just opened a whole can of worms for me, because I was sitting there kind of thinking about this philosophically, and they were forced to become cannibals. The dog was already dying, and we wouldn't have lived without it. And I'm just like, wow, if I were in that situation, what would I do? And there's like so much guilt and regret and shame in what they had to do. You can tell that, he's upset that rumor's spreading. And then finally comes around to say, well, it's true, but, and it just, makes you feel so icky. There's these things that inherently we know right from wrong, are good and are bad. And cannibalism is one of them. You just don't do it.
Right.
I don't know. Would I rather die or would I live another day?
Yeah. Am I capable of even judging somebody that was in that exact situation? You know, because you have the Donner Party crashed an airplane.
Yes.
And so they ended up having to eat someone. And like, I can't do it. I can't. I think I would have. I mean, let's just face it. I'm really not that outdoorsy. And so I probably would be the first to die anyway. So
I thought you were going to say, I'm not that outdoorsy, so this is never going to happen to me. So I don't want to think about it.
Well, that too. Like, I'd rather not think about this. Just make sure you have like a year's supply of food and you'll be good.
Oy, yes, that's why you should always be prepared.
Get that 72-hour kit quick.
Oof. Yeah, that's
the map also was an interesting thing because they had this map that had fingers for like Bering Straits kind of thing. And I thought that was interesting how you had all of the, you know, the dogs who were so-called cannibal dogs on that side of the island, and just how they had so many dogs, and the island was big enough that there could be these offset groups, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So what were your thoughts on where you had the transition of Spots to Chief?
Where he kind of passed the torch to him.
Yeah. So he was basically just like, yeah, I'm sorry, kid. I can't do this anymore.
I didn't understand why. It was like, what, you have a family now, so you can't do it, so you're giving up on your oath, or what, because she's pregnant, or what, you just like it better on the island? Like, initially, it didn't make sense to me. Now, later, after he goes in the fight at the very end, and he gets, you know, crippled and injured and doesn't have an eye, like, that made more sense to me. But I didn't like the fact that that happened sooner, or he was like passing the torch. Like, no, you have your duty. You made this like pledge, this vow. And I just didn't like that. Like, well, yeah, since dogs aren't really a thing anymore, but he's here. Like, it's your job now. I didn't like that part. Yeah.
The little pilot just spent all this time coming after you.
For you. For you. Not that he needed a dog.
Right. Well, he was the only one of the people that even tried to come after any of their animals.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, I mean, he was probably the only 12-year-old that had access to a plane. So I guess that. And then you have people who are older who end up being more willing to comply, and younger who, you know, maybe aren't as willing but don't have the access to the means to do that. But because he's the ward of the mayor, he can work his magic, which I actually really want to learn how to fly a plane. That's on my bucket list. And so the fact that those older planes, you had like young kids knew how to fly them, is very fascinating to me. I'm like, really? So this is unnecessarily made difficult because if kids can do this, I can do it too.
Right.
How did you feel the story went? Like the progression of each scene?
You know what? You could freeze frame this movie and every single one is visually stunning, artistically beautiful. Something interesting is happening. This is kind of a tangent, but texturally, like I felt like I could just reach my hand out and feel some of the textures that were there. Yeah. It was so visceral to me. You know, there's just like these waves in the background or this unique thing. So, but as far as the story, I liked the way that it was structured because I think Wes Anderson films can be a bit slow. Not that that's bad, but he has a slower pace. He doesn't have to wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. You know, all this stuff in your face, all these jokes, all these colors, all these spidgy widgets. And so it takes its time. It's very Miyazaki in that way. It's going to go slow.
Yeah.
There's going to be periods of no dialogue. Dialogue won't be crazy loud.
Yeah.
And so I did feel that the different structures that they broke it into helped to like refocus you. Like, oh, okay, we're done with that one. Like so it doesn't feel like, oh, this is just dragging on.
And there were different moments where it kind of broke the fourth wall, as in the character just kind of stopped and then looked straight into the camera. And at first, I wasn't sure if I liked that, but it was always for some type of comedic effect. Like, you're supposed to notice that this was weird. And I actually liked it. like he's so quirky, and it's just, I have come to really appreciate his style. As far as themes.
Well, we talked about the theme of cannibalism. I'm just kidding.
Right.
Well, there's a few themes. There's the political theme, I think, of you know, what I don't know if it's a theme or if it's just a story point that they pick up on, you know, when one group is in power and they want to push something down on the people. We see the rhetoric that's used, the tactics that are used, the escalation, the extreme cases. Then slowly
the squashing of dissent, you know, the isolation of a certain group, which ultimately, you know, this is going down the authoritarian path or fascist path, I guess you will, of othering a certain group and then isolating that group and then blaming that group for problems, and then ultimately, well, we just got to destroy that group, because that's ultimately what he wanted. He wanted to kill all the dogs, but if you would have presented that initially, that never would have flown, especially since people had such attachment to these dogs and had grown close to them. So we had to separate them, we had to isolate them, we had to other them, and then it gets to the point where they just keep doing that, not just once, but they do it again and again and again. They keep building their case, where then when he presents, like, now this is uncurable. We need, that's another thing is, like you said, squashing of dissenting opinions, but even using science to, or in this case, the opposite of science, quelling science to, you know, hey, there is a solution here. There's a remedy. There's something that we could fix. But no, if that is presented, then I won't be able to achieve my means. And so that's gotten rid of, because ultimately he needs to kill the dogs. If there's a cure to the snout flu, then he'll never be able to kill the dog. So he's seizing on the opportunity. So I really thought that was interesting. And there were a lot of parallels to 2020 and the pandemic that happened there. I thought that was just very, very interesting that this had happened 2 years prior. That never would have crossed anyone's mind. But having seen it through this lens, it was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of parallels with what happened. Well, there you go.
Yep. Hey, case in point proven.
Yeah. Well, and you have the group of kids who kind of play the Scooby-Doo aspect, led by Tracy Walker, the exchange student, who is just, she's just got this like giant red like afro, and which is just funny. I think her design of hair is just kind of funny. And she's like starts having a crush on the little pilot, Atari. And she's like, oh, dang it. Now I have a crush on you.
I loved it. It was just, they said it. They just came out and said it. They didn't have to, you know, show the budding romance. He has an interesting way of showing romances in his films. And this was like, oh, no, we're just not going to beat around the bush. We're going to say it how it is.
Right. But then there was also other, like, there weren't really very many other characters, but there were some of the classmates, like the one who was in the hacker seat. Like, he showed up a couple times, but never talked, but just would like give you that knowing look just at the end, like, hey, I did this. What was so funny about her is like she had the conspiracy theory at the beginning. I think that this whole thing was devised in order to get rid of the dogs. Like, where's your proof? I have yet to find it, but I will. And I really like her spunk. I really like the whole thing. And the fact that it really did come down that she was completely right, that the actual flu was designed in order to get rid of the dogs, like from the beginning. It was just like, oh, if you're a conspiracy theorist, this movie's like ringing a lot of bells. Pavlov's dog happening right now. Yes, and maybe that's the point. I don't know.
I mean, it was
that's its own conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it was something prompted this on for him. So we shall see.
There was one part where the little pilot Atari needed a liver transplant, and the uncle's like, fine, I will do it myself. And he'll take my liver. So they do this surgery scene, and they actually show the surgery of him like going in and doing this. And even in this scenario, I can't take it.
Oh, really? I thought that was a very cool scene.
And I'm realizing, obviously, I could never be a doctor or in healthcare. And it's just, I get way too squirmish with things like that. It's like, oh, I can't. But it wasn't, I mean, the fact that it's there is cool. I thought it was very interesting. And I kind of liked the fact that he really didn't shy away from death or like the reality of the situation. The fact that you had Sport, the other dog, you had the bones, you know? And I was like, well, Morgan will like this. There's enough death in here that but he really did show like it wasn't like any of the characters. Well, at least there was a point in time where I felt like, I don't know if any of these characters are quote unquote sacred to him. Like, would he just kill them off? I don't know. Because it doesn't seem like it's not like it's this person's hero's journey that you're following. You're following a lot of different people and a lot of different puzzle pieces happening. So I felt like that was a cool aspect of it. And like, it just kept you engaged because you're like, is this, who do I hold on to? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's that one scene where the 4 dogs, the 5 are all in this hovering cart, you know, that kind of transports from place to place. And then Chief and Little Pilot get separated from the group somehow. Cargo holder breaks in half and then they go on a different path. And then they go into almost this like, not incinerator thing, but it's basically where things go to die. And you think, oh, this could be the end. And you're kind of expecting, you know, like these 4 dogs could just die unceremoniously right there. And then we just continue the story between Chief and the Little Pilot. It doesn't happen. Miraculously, they make it, but it totally goes with your point. That could have happened. And yeah, he's not a respecter of persons, if you will. This is very Game of Thrones-esque, where no one is safe. Just no, you don't know who the good guy. Well, for this one, you kind of know who the good guys are. But in Game of Thrones, you see the good and the bad in everyone, and no one is safe. Your favorite character could be gone next episode, and sayonara.
Yeah, it's a way to tell a story. I appreciated it, because it did keep me engaged, being like, what's going to happen? What's he going to do? So as far as the music goes, the music was done by Alexander Desplat, and he has composed scores for over 100 films, something from low budget and independent
Twilight, New Moon, Harry Potter.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I was like. I was like, hi, Twilight, man. New Moon, go from Twilight to this. It's just like, man, you got range. The thing is, while I was listening, I didn't really notice a lot of music coming in, except for the specific songs that they brought in. Mm-hmm. And the specific songs were not by him. So it's...
Yeah, I actually did notice the soundtrack or the score.
You did?
Yeah, I noticed that there were interesting beats, drums, especially at the very beginning part, that made me perk up. I think sometimes a score can be so good that you just completely are absorbed in it and you forget. But then it can also be so good that you pay attention to it. And I felt like this one, it added a unique flair to this film, which I appreciated.
I'm in awe at the whole variety of his work. So you've got Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows 1 and 2, Little Women, The King's Speech, The Danish Girl, The Imitations Game, Moonrise Kingdom, Argo, Rise of the Guardians. Yeah, you got Secret Life of Pets. But he also came in with the fantastic Mr. Fox. So he's worked with Wes before, and I guess Wes really liked him, so he's back in dog form.
In dog form. Another thing on the animation that I just loved was anytime there was a fight scene, it just turned into this puff cloud of just body parts fighting, and you could tell they used some sort of fluffy cotton as the animation tool. I can't even say.
Yeah.
And it was just so perfect to me because it was just you've seen that in old cartoons all the time, where it's just this cat fight and there's just body parts and a big cloud, puff of smoke, whatever. And so whenever I saw that, it just made me giggle because it wasn't one of those one and done things. They kept showing it again and again and again. And it just fit so perfectly. It made me laugh. It was visually appealing. It was simple, but it presented everything you needed to know about the fight. And it was great.
Yeah, that was definitely something that I noticed as well. It was just like, oh, here comes the cotton balls.
Yep. Yeah, there's so many in this movie. You could watch this again and then pull out all these other tidbits or interesting things or something you didn't see the first time before and enjoy it that much more, I think.
Yeah, this movie wasn't one that I necessarily would go back to, like, let me watch it again. Go. Right. Rewind. It's been about a week since I've watched it in preparation for this. And so I could go back and rewatch it now. And I would feel like, yeah, I got even more out of it this time.
Yeah.
And I feel like I would.
I feel like this would be one of those films where it would be hard for me to put it on because it's like, oh, I got to watch Isle of Dogs. But then the second that it starts, it's like, oh, yeah, this is a really good movie. This is fun. This is funny.
Right.
Yeah. It's one of those. It's not like I'm so excited I want to put it on. It's more of okay, I guess I'll watch it. And then once you do, it's so great. And I think, I don't know if that's maybe other feelings that people, when this came out in the box office, had. Like, oh, that looks cool, but I don't know if I really want to see it. And that's the thing with Wes Anderson's films is that they're not meant for kids. This isn't a kid animated film. It's PG-13. Right. It's very serious. I think kids, for the most part, wouldn't really enjoy it that much. Some of the themes might go over their head, but they still might have a little bit of enjoyment, but it's not meant for kids. And I think that's what really makes these films great. And we've talked about this numerous times, like talking, looking back at the Pixar films and Brad Bird. Brad Bird does the same thing. He doesn't make films for kids. He makes films for adults and goes from there. And if the kids find enjoyment from it, great. But he's not going to pander or talk down to them. And Wes Anderson does the same thing, Isle of Dogs, and I think that's why it's one of the top tier films. This was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, didn't win it, and it lost to Into the Spider-Verse, which
that makes
sense,
like,
because I was like, this is so good, it should have won. Too bad it didn't come out in 2019. That was the year that Toy Story 4 won. So if it would have waited just a year, I mean, it for sure would have been Academy nominated.
Can you imagine, though, if it did come out in 2019? Like, how many of the conspiracy theorists would be like,
oh, for sure,
be like, hey, we have seen this. They were warning us,
Yeah.
This definitely would have been that. But yeah, I mean, anything to get Toy Story 4 out would have been great. But I agree, though. There are people who love Wes Anderson films. And that was one of the things that are at the press screening was asked to me. The press affiliate, he was just like, oh, are you a Wes Anderson fan then? And I was like, sure. I wouldn't say that I am a Wes Anderson fan, as in I don't I don't know what he's working on right now. I could go ahead and look on it with IMDb and he's got stuff and I'm like, cool, he's got stuff in the pipeline, but I'm not doing any extra digging, if that makes sense.
For sure.
But I enjoy it when it comes out. So
what would you rate it?
I'm going to give this, I was very unsure because I really like the quirkiness of it. I really like that as he tells the story, you really get sucked in to different aspects and different character arcs, and just the character dialogues are very fun. And I don't know if fun is the right word, but you definitely get a giggle out of certain things and you like watching it. And so I was going back and forth, like, would I give this a 4-star? I don't think I could give it a total 4-star because the replay value on it isn't as strong as I would like it to be for a 4-star film. But I also like it more than 3.5. So I'm going with 3.75 out of 5.
All right. I'm going to give it 4 stars. That's just my gut reaction up at the front, but I really enjoyed everything that I saw. I liked the story. I thought it had interesting undertones. There were lots of different layers to this film. Unique characters. There were quite a few characters, but I thought that they were all unique enough that they stood out on their own. And obviously there were some that had more important storylines than others, but I just really liked where this was going. The concept was funny. That was one thing we didn't talk about, is when he was producing Fantastic Mr. Fox and directing that, he was filming it in England, and he drove by the sign every day that said Isle of Dogs. And I've looked this up, and it's not an island. It's just like an area of England, a little patch. And there's nothing that seems to be about dogs at all. It's just called that. It's not like there was a place that there were a bunch of dogs or whatever. It's just called that, from what I can tell. And just the name sparked so much interest in him that he kind of came up with this idea of like, what if there was an Isle of Dogs, and how would that happen? And why would it be that way? And yeah, so I thought that was interesting. So inspiration can come from anything, even just a random street sign in England.
Yeah.
So don't tell yourself, well, I don't have any good ideas. I just don't have any ideas. Well, you're not looking hard enough, son.
Let the ideas flow.
All right. Let us know what your thoughts on this film is. Go to rotoscopers.com/272 and give us your thoughts there.
We also have a review that somebody left us, and so I would like to share that. This is from Xanderland Studios via Apple Podcasts. And Xanderland Studios says, best animation podcast, period. 5 stars. Definitely my favorite podcast. I love all the hosts, but my personal favorite is Morgan. She has so much infectious fun, positive energy, and is so awesome. Several favorites of mine have been discussed, including Tangled, Jonah, the VeggieTales movie, Megamind, The Incredibles, and so many, many more. I would like to request a few shows could cover, as these are some of my favorite shows of mine. Teen Titans, He-Man, Kim Possible, Randy Cunningham, 9th Grade Ninja, and Star versus the Forces of Evil. If you could cover just one of these, I'd be satisfied. My only real complaint is the amount of ads on each episode. Well, here's the thing about that, Mr. Xanderland, is we do have a ad-free option. You can go to our Patreon and join up there, and you get no ads ever. You also get your episodes a couple days early when available.
And you get bonus episodes and bonus content with each episode. So things that got cut, extra discussions that we had, those end up in the patron version of the episode, which is pretty cool. So thank you so much for your review. Aw, shucks. Makes me blush.
Gosh.
You can leave us a review anywhere where good reviews are found. We appreciate it when you go to iTunes or it's not called iTunes anymore. I'm dating myself, but Apple is the one who changes the name like every year or so. So that's on them. But you can go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review, and we appreciate it oh so much. So thank you so much for those 5-star reviews. That's all we have for today. Until next time, we are the Rotoscopers.
Out of 10. Did I tell you about my last week?
No, tell me.
I'll tell you. So Julie came in on the train, and I picked her up, and then we drove to Hershey, Pennsylvania to check out the Hershey Chocolate Factory, which was quite fun. The main reason why this was on my bucket list was because somebody told me in high school that the whole town smells like chocolate. Uh-huh. And so I wanted to see, does it actually smell like chocolate? And I asked Julie, and she's like, well, the town doesn't smell, but when we got into the factory, she's like, oh yeah, I totally smell it. And I'm like, dang it, I can't smell it. Oh man. It's out of my spectrum.
All this time.
No. But the factory tour is free, and it was actually pretty fun. So you go around, and they have it's basically like a Disneyland ride. They have a theme park connected to it. I heard from one of my cousins that he thought that the free ride was better. It was the best ride at the entire place. So I was like, well, there you go.
You've been listening to the Animation Addicts Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts.
And if you want to help spread the word, be sure to share the podcast with your friends on social media. Just don't forget to tag us at Rotoscopers on Instagram and use the hashtag Animation Addicts. For all the links and full show notes for this episode, go to rotoscopers.com/podcast. Now, if you still can't get enough for your animation fix, be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and visit rotoscopers.com for more animation news, reviews, and interviews. Thanks for listening.